I wasn't supposed to be there when she stepped into the shower. But I didn't leave. It started with a busted pipe in her kitchen. Water pooling into the hallway, slick under bare feet. I was just the guy from the unit downstairs, toolbox in hand, t-shirt soaked through from running up after hearing the banging. I wasn't her plumber or her friend. Just a neighbor who offered to help before thinking it through. "Third valve under the sink," she said, kneeling beside me, breathless from trying to stop it herself. "It won't budge." Her voice was calm but tight, the kind of control you only learn from being let down too many times. She looked around 45, maybe a few years younger, but her eyes, hazel, steady, carried decades of practice distance. I'd seen her maybe twice before, always heading out early, never smiling. Always in dark clothes, keys in hand like a shield. "Got it," I muttered, twisting the valve with both hands, wrench slipping in the damp. "You live alone?" "Usually," she said. No follow-up. No explanation. Just that one word, usually, like a door left cracked open. The water stopped. Silence filled the apartment like fog. And suddenly I was too aware of how close she was crouching beside me, how the shoulder of her robe brushed mine, how her perfume smelled like something dry and expensive, like burnt jasmine and old paper. I should have left. I knew that. But she stood up slowly and said, "Thank you, Luca," like she already knew my name. I never told her. She poured tea. Not out of politeness, not really. She didn't seem like someone who did things to be polite. She poured because she wanted to sit across from me, in her quiet apartment, while her robe clung wetly to her collarbone and her hair stuck to her forehead. "You're in school?" she asked, eyes flicking to my campus hoodie. "Lit major," I said. "Poetry, mostly." Something shifted in her expression. "Of course it's poetry," she murmured half to herself. "You have that sad dog look. Like you're always listening for something no one's saying." I laughed, but I didn't deny it. She looked at me a long time. Not like a woman looking at a younger man, but like someone surprised to realize they feel anything at all. Then she stood. "I'm dripping," she said, her robe darkening where the fabric clung to her thigh. "I should shower." "Yeah," I said quickly, standing too fast. "Of course. I should head back anyway." But I didn't move. And she didn't either. Instead, she tilted her head slightly. There was a beat, a silence that ate. Then she turned and walked toward the bathroom. I stared at the tea she left behind. It had gone cold. I heard the water start. The soft patter, then the rush of steam. And then, her voice, low and unhurried, from just past the doorframe. "There's room for one more." I didn't breathe. Not at first. But my hand was already on the hem of my shirt. And for the first time since meeting her, I couldn't think of a single reason to walk away. I didn't step into the shower. Not then. I stood just outside the door, hand on the frame, forehead hot. The steam slipped out in curls, and her silhouette blurred behind the curtain like a half-finished sketch. My shirt was still clutched in my hand. I was 24. She was, what? Mid-40s? The kind of beautiful that had nothing to do with trends. The kind of woman who carried silence like armor. She said it softly. "There's room for one more." Like she didn't expect an answer. But that invitation, it didn't feel like flirting. It felt like a dare. I stepped back into the hallway, rubbing my neck. There were dishes in the sink. Books stacked along the floor, all worn at the corners, half of them annotated and looping, impatient pen. A record player sat still in the corner, needle off its groove. Everything about her place felt like it had just been paused. I sat down again at the kitchen table, tea now stone cold, and listened to the water. What the hell was I doing here? I wasn't some charming guy she met at a bar. I fixed the pipe. She was naked, 15 feet away, and I was imagining us in the same shower. And yet, I hadn't moved. I tried to remember if I'd ever seen her smile. Not a polite smile. A real one. I couldn't. She came back out wrapped in a fresh towel. Hair wet, skin flushed, eyes unreadable. No makeup. No robe. No walls. She didn't say anything at first, just walked past me toward the bedroom. I looked down at my hands like they were suddenly unfamiliar. Then her voice floated from down the hall. My ex used to break things on purpose. Little things. The toaster. A drawer. Just to see if I'd ask for help. I looked up. It made him feel needed, she said. He hated when I fixed things myself. I didn't know what to say. But maybe that was the point. She wasn't telling me to respond, she just wanted to let something out into the air. Let it sit there. She came back in a loose black sweater that slipped off one shoulder and a pair of leggings. She looked softer somehow. Not younger. Just less alone. She sat across from me again, brushing her damp hair over one side, her gaze heavy and searching. Why haven't you left yet? She asked. My throat tightened. I don't know, I said. Which was a lie. I just didn't have the right words for why. She reached forward then, slow, barely touching the fabric of my sleeve. Not a grip. Just a question. You're not scared of older women, are you? Her voice was teasing. But the tremble in her fingers? That wasn't part of the joke. That was something else entirely. I opened my mouth. I don't know what I meant to say. But nothing came out. She didn't pull her hand away. Neither did I. It was barely a touch, fingertips grazing the inside of my arm, over the sleeve, but it sent a ripple straight through me. I could feel my pulse jump, not in my chest, but lower. And not just from want. From confusion. From how easy it was to fall into this space with her. I'm not scared of you, I said. It came out quieter than I meant. She looked at me, something unreadable flickering behind her eyes. Then she smiled, but not the kind of smile you give when you're flirting. It was more like the kind you give when you're afraid you've gone too far. I shouldn't have said that, she murmured, pulling her hand back. But it was too late. The air had shifted. Her sweater slipped a little lower off her shoulder, exposing a line of skin so delicate it felt like it shouldn't be real. I wanted to look away, but I didn't. Couldn't. You ever do something you can't explain? She asked suddenly. Like, it doesn't make sense on paper, but you keep doing it anyway? I nodded. Every time I come here. Her eyes flinched. Just barely. Then the knock. A sharp, uninvited rap at her front door. Not loud, but definite. We both jumped. She stood slowly, smoothing the front of her sweater like she'd forgotten she was even wearing it. I stayed seated, still holding her tea. Still warm where her fingers had touched me. She opened the door only a crack. I heard a man's voice. Older. Polite, but familiar. Too familiar. Just wanted to drop off the mail you left in your box again. Her voice shifted instantly, lighter, casual. Thanks, Alan. Sorry, I've been a bit distracted today. Everything okay? The voice asked, pausing too long. You look a little flushed. She laughed. It sounded fake. Just took a hot shower, she said. There was another pause. Then footsteps retreating. The door clicked shut. She stayed with her back to it for a second, eyes closed. Then turned toward me. My landlord, she said. Divorced. Thinks I'm lonely. You're not? I asked before I could stop myself. She didn't answer. Instead, she walked over to the record player and dropped the needle. The static popped before a Nina Simone track began to hum through the quiet. I stood up. I should go. She nodded but didn't move. I took one step toward the door, then stopped. She had her back to me again, her bare shoulder glowing in the lamplight, her head slightly tilted as if she were listening for something. You don't have to, she said softly. My hand gripped the doorknob. Hard. I didn't turn it. I let go of the doorknob. I told myself I was just staying for one more song. Just to be polite. But the truth was, I wanted to see if she'd look at me the way I looked at her. Like we were both hanging off the edge of something neither of us built, but both of us needed. She sat on the floor this time. Cross-legged. One arm curled around her knee, wine glass in her other hand. No more pretending to be composed. I followed her lead. Sat across from her, back against the bookshelf. The music played low between us, Nina whispering, I want a little sugar in my bowl. The words didn't help. We said nothing for a while. Just looked. Then I heard her exhale. The kind of breath that comes right before truth. He cheated on me, she said suddenly. With someone who worked under him. Someone younger. Her voice didn't shake. But her fingers did, just slightly, where they held the glass. I didn't move. The worst part wasn't the affair. It was realizing how long I'd been invisible in my own home. That hit harder than I expected. I see you, I said without thinking. She looked up. God. I wanted to take it back. Not because it wasn't true, but because it sounded like a line. And I meant it like a prayer. Do you? She asked. I didn't answer. Not with words. Just shifted forward. Slowly. Closed the distance between us inch by inch until her knees brushed mine. I think about you, I said. More than I should. And I don't know if it's because you're older or just real. But I can't get you out of my head. The music faded into silence. She stared at me like she was reading every word I didn't say. Then she whispered, Tell me what you want from me, Luca. That stopped everything. Because I didn't know how to answer without ruining whatever we were balancing on. I opened my mouth. Closed it. She leaned forward, close enough that I felt the heat off her skin, saw the faint line of freckles across her collarbone. Say it, she said. Or leave. It wasn't a threat. It was a lifeline. And I still didn't speak. Instead, I reached out and gently, stupidly, ran my thumb over her wrist. Just once. Her skin goosebumped beneath my touch. She didn't flinch. She didn't lean in. She just looked at me with this terrifying softness. And asked, Are you going to break my heart? Are you going to break my heart? She asked. I should have said no. God, I wanted to. But I didn't get the chance. Because that's when I saw it, a photograph. Half buried under a stack of books behind her. The edge of a silver frame catching the lamplight. And I recognized the face. My mother. My throat went dry. I blinked, then leaned forward slowly, reaching for the frame without even thinking. She watched me with narrowed eyes, confused. I held the photo up. It was old, 10, maybe 15 years ago. My mom and her, arms wrapped around each other in front of some vineyard. Both laughing. Hair windblown. Younger, freer. You know her? I asked, my voice hoarse. My mom, her name's Mara. Her lips parted. No denial. Just a long, stunned pause. You're Mara's son? She said finally, like it physically hit her. Silence. Then she laughed once, short, sharp, almost bitter. I should have known. The way you look at people when you think they're not watching. That's her. I dropped the photo. My heart was in my ears. How do you know her? I asked. She stood up, backing away slightly, hand pressed to her forehead. We were friends. Years ago. More than friends, once, briefly. That knocked the air out of me. I was at your house. You were a kid, maybe 9? She added, voice distant. I remember you dropped a popsicle down the stairs. I stared at her. I remembered that. The purple stain never came out of the carpet. I just never remembered her. We both stood in the middle of the room now, like strangers. The intimacy of 5 minutes ago vanished, ripped clean. I didn't know, I said, barely above a whisper. I swear. She believed me. I could see it in the way her shoulders dropped. But now you do, she said. There was no anger in her tone. Just restraint. Painful, practiced restraint. I don't care, I said. About the photo. About anything before this. I'm not that kid anymore. But I remember you as one, she said. That's the difference. Something in me broke a little at that. I'm not a boy, I said. And you're not just someone from a picture. You're. She closed the distance fast. Placed her hand flat against my chest. Don't finish that sentence, she said. Not unless you're sure you mean it. I stared at her. Everything felt wrong, and still, I didn't want to leave. So I said nothing. Just pressed my hand gently over hers, where it sat against my heart. That's when her phone lit up on the table. Mara, 2 missed calls. She saw it before I did. And her hand slowly, painfully, slipped away. The phone screen dimmed again. Her name, Mara, faded back into darkness. Either of us spoke. Not for a while. She walked over and turned the music off. The silence after the needle lifted felt louder than the song ever did. I stood in the middle of her living room like a problem no one wanted to solve. I didn't ask to know her, I said quietly. I didn't come here because of her. I know, she replied, her voice almost too calm. But that doesn't mean she won't matter now. I watched her face for a crack, something to hold on to. But she was guarded again. Pulled back into that quiet, unreachable place I'd only just started to see beneath. I took a step closer. She's not part of this. Whatever this is, it's between us. Her eyes lifted to mine. Is it? She asked. Or was it just timing? Proximity? You were lonely. I was bleeding. And we made something warm out of a cold night. That's not fair, I said. I know, she replied. But it might still be true. That hurt more than I expected. I walked to the table, picked up the photo again. My mother's smile. Her arm around a woman who, back then, was probably just a mystery to me. A presence in the background. A footnote. Not the woman who just cracked open my chest like a matchbook. I looked at her again, this time, really looked. Tired eyes. Damp hair curling around her cheek. That black sweater slipping again, like it always wanted to fall. You said your ex made you feel invisible, I murmured. So I don't know what this means for you. But you've never been invisible to me. She flinched, just a little. Then finally, her voice cracked. I don't know how to want something I'm not supposed to have. I stepped forward and reached for her hand. Not greedy. Just present. Honest. You're allowed, I said. You're allowed to want something messy. Something real. Even if it scares the hell out of you. She looked at our hands. Hers trembled in mine. Then she whispered, What happens when your mother finds out? I'll tell her the truth, I said. That I met someone who saw me. Who didn't ask me to be smaller. Who didn't treat me like a kid trying on adult feelings. That made her look at me again. And if she says it's wrong? She asked. I'll still choose you, I said. Even if it's just for one night. Even if it never happens again. She didn't smile. But her eyes glassed over. And when she leaned in, she didn't kiss me. She pressed her forehead to mine. Soft. Fragile. I don't want just one night, she whispered. She didn't want just one night. And neither did I. But that didn't mean it was easy. The next morning, we sat in her kitchen. Same tea, new silence. This time, it wasn't tension, it was something heavier. Something closer to peace. Like two people who finally stopped pretending they didn't care. She had one hand wrapped around her mug. The other rested on the table, open. Waiting. I slid mine into it without saying a word. Her phone buzzed again. Mara. She didn't answer. You should call her, I said gently. It's going to come up either way. She sighed, looked out the window. She's going to think I'm insane. She might, I admitted. But you're not. She turned back to me. And what are you going to tell her? I thought about it. About all the ways this could unravel. About the lectures, the looks, the people who'd never understand. Then I smiled, small, certain. I'm going to tell her I met someone kind. Smart. A little terrifying. And that I'm not sorry. That made her laugh, finally. A real one. The next few weeks were messy. She called my mom. I wasn't there, but she told me later that Mara didn't yell. Didn't judge. Just listened. Said she needed time. We gave her time. But we didn't pause what we had. Some nights I stayed over. Some I didn't. Sometimes we sat close and said nothing. Other times we fought, about space, about fear, about how fast things were moving. It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't shiny or smooth. But it was ours. And I saw her, truly, every single day. Not just the strong parts, but the cracks. The doubts. The guilt she still carried like a shadow on her back. I didn't try to fix it. I just stayed. And maybe that's what changed the most, not just us, but me. I stopped needing to define it. Stopped needing to prove it made sense to anyone but the two of us. One night, as I locked the door behind us after grocery shopping, she leaned against the wall and just watched me for a second. Then she said, You know, you never really left that night. I looked back at her, keys still in my hand. You never really let me. She stepped forward and kissed me, quietly, like punctuation. Like the end of a chapter we didn't know we were writing until now. Some people will say it was wrong. That it was too fast, too complicated, too close to something we weren't supposed to touch. But love doesn't care about permission. It just wants to be felt. And I felt her, in every silence, every breath. Every moment we didn't run. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next? Let me know in the comments. Your feedback shapes every word I write. Speech balloon sparkles.